Hello, everybody. This is Lisa, and I'm doing a follow-up post to my Facebook post. I'm also sharing this with YouTube because I'm out to get the word out. Our local news stations did not feel that this was a newsworthy story, and I need help spreading the word. I know that this same scenario of police brutality and corruption on such a level happens nationwide. However, I recently experienced it myself right here in Flowood, Mississippi, which is approximately 30 minutes from my own home. On April the 24th, while going down Flowood Drive in Flowood, I felt very profiled, okay? I'm going to explain why. I was stopped by one officer, LaShawn Darby. I was told I was doing 62 in a 45. Now, Flowood Drive is a 55-mile-an-hour zone, and at one point it becomes 45 miles an hour. The area in which he blue lighted me in was a 55-mile-an-hour zone, but it was just before the 45-mile-an-hour zone, about 500 yards from it or so, and so by the time I was able to stop, I stopped in a 45-mile-an-hour zone, which was on the corner of 4th and Elm. Now, Officer Darby says that he stopped me at Clear River Construction. Clear River Construction was actually a mile down the road from where I actually was stopped. And so he was absolutely incorrect in that scenario in where this stop took place. However, that is not even the icing on the cake. From the moment that he stopped me and approached my vehicle, he was very arrogant, disgruntled, and rude. He very sharply says, "Do you know why I stopped you?" And of course, I've been taught to be very respectful to a law enforcement officer. And I said, "No, sir, I don't know why you stopped me." And he says, "Well, you were speeding. You were doing 65 or 62 and a 45. And I said, I don't feel like I was speeding. I had my cruise control set, sir. And I said, but I am sorry if you felt I was speeding. And he said, well, of course you were speeding. I said you were speeding, didn't I? I don't have time to mess around with stupid people or people who want to act stupid, is the way he put it. Needless to say, I turned around and felt like there was no sense in really arguing with this officer because he already appeared very agitated, and that the side of the road was not the place to be discussing this. This was something that was going to have to go a whole lot further for his safety and mine both. As far as I didn't want anything to be said that I didn't say, and I didn't want him, I didn't want anything to be said about him that I may have misconstrued. So I figured we would take this up with his higher officer. Now, he did, at that time, write me a citation for the 62 and a 45. He had asked for my driver's license and insurance card. He snatched them out of my hand. He turned around and gave the insurance card back, took my license to his vehicle, and wrote the citation. Come back. I did have questions because I'm not one that runs around getting a bunch of tickets on a regular basis and stuff. And so I didn't really know how things were going to work with it. I guess it was my stupidity for not really knowing. I'm not sure. But he was very arrogant. When I had my questions, he didn't want to answer them really. He pointed to the bottom of the ticket and he said, you could call this number at the bottom of the ticket and they'll tell you all about it and what it pertains to. You'll see that he says at or near Clear River. I don't know if you really can see that, and that it was speeding 62 and a 45. And then he points to this and tells me that's basically who I call. Basically throwing me off. He didn't really want to talk to me. Needless to say, we had an original court date for May the 25th, I believe is what the ticket says here. Yeah, it was May the 25th at 9 a.m. of course, when I came home and I spoke with my husband and I explained to him I wasn't speeding, that I had my cruise control set. I explained to him everything that had happened with this officer. I was crying. I was upset. I was beside myself. I had never been treated in such a manner, so disrespectful from someone that I was giving respect to. So arrogantly, so making me fearful of a law enforcement officer. We the people should never be fearful of someone who is supposed to be serving and protecting. But I did not feel served or protected that day. However, my husband and I discussed it, and we said, well, we're going to go ahead and we're going to plead not guilty. We're going to go ahead and get them set me up for a trial date, because there's no sense in going to the May 25th, because that would be a guilty or not guilty type thing, kind of a waste of time. Let's go ahead and move forward with a trial date. So we did. We set up for a trial date of June 29th. Now, before the trial date, my husband did a lot of research and opened my eyes to a lot of things. Watched multiple videos, researched for my defense and stuff. Now, he did this because originally, because of my health issues, which a lot of people on my Facebook friend list know, my doctor did not want me to represent myself in court. But according to the state of Mississippi, my husband could not act as an agent for me. Not an attorney, but could not act as an agent for me because I was not facing murder charges or something felony related. So I was, of course, against my doctor's orders, having to represent myself in order to be able to fight this ticket. So first and foremost, the courts would not recognize that my doctor said it was not in the best interest of my health to do this. Now, I chose to continue. So I'll take credit where credit's due and blame where blame's due. You know, I chose to continue with this. So at this point, even knowing that it was against my doctor's advice, and so I do not in no way hold the courts liable for any type of health-related issues that would have resolved from a normal trial. However, my trial was anything but normal that day. But we will get to that later on in this video. The day I got my ticket, my husband immediately called to file a complaint about Officer LaShawn Darby to his superior officer, Lieutenant Cullum. Upon speaking to Lieutenant Cullum, he explained, that I had come home crying, what all I had told him, that he didn't understand why the officer would have a problem with me, that I was not the type to give the officer any problem. As a matter of fact, I watch TV. I know what's correct to do and not correct to do. When the officer approached my vehicle, I had my hands on my steering wheel in the line of sight at the whole time until he asked for my driver's license and insurance card, which I had to reach in my wallet and my above caddy that was in my vehicle to get those things. Other than that, my hands were on the steering wheel the whole time. Never was I a threat to the officer in any way, shape, or form. Never did I deserve the treatment that I received from him. So upon talking to Lieutenant Cullum, he asked my husband to give him some time to investigate it and that he would get back in touch with us. On April the 26th, after, much research and stuff, my husband had found something online about a Freedom of Information Act request letter. We felt it was time to start building my defense, and he printed out several Freedom of Information Act request letters requesting the dash cam from my stop for multiple reasons. Not only would the dash cam show where Officer Darby actually stopped me, the correct location, it would also show the treatment that I received and help to clear up any investigation that Lieutenant Cullum may have regarding this officer and his treatment of me. You'll find we gave 3 copies of this Freedom of Information Act to 3 different people. It was received by Jennifer Chapman on 4/26/2017. Says where we requested the dash cam, and we hand delivered it to her and got her to sign off on it. Another one was delivered to Chief Richie McCluskey of the Flowood Police Department. You'll see he also received his on the 26th. And we have a third one. However, I cannot show you, and I will explain later as to why, but it was also received, and we have proof of that. But due to the issues that will be explained later in this video, it was received of the prosecuting attorney's office. So I'll explain why we cannot disclose that one on video. However, that day that we gave them this, Lieutenant Cullum had called us back to his office, and we sat down and had a talk with Lieutenant Cullum. He attempted to pull up the dash cam of Officer LaShawn Darby's dash cam stops that whole day. None of his stops, conveniently, were recorded, and we were told that his dash cam more than likely was not working because of some electrical and mechanical issues that vehicle typically has. To which I exclaimed that for the officer's safety, as well as the public's safety, that never should an officer leave to go out on call or on shift or on duty without his dash cam working. That is important, y'all. There are way too many officer shootings. There are way too much police brutality going on nowadays for the dash cam on a car that an officer's driving to not be working. I mean, I'm about ready to investigate or invest in a dash cam myself because I think I need a dash cam for protection after this. But that's neither here or there. But this video was missing. Now, with this video missing, it was a relevant piece of evidence to show that this officer not only lied about where he stopped me, but was very brutal and ugly in a sense, and hateful to me, and upset me and made me feel intimidated. It was volatile to the whole investigation, for one. It was volatile to my ticket as to show that he didn't stop me in a 45-mile-an-hour zone. But it's missing. So, moving forward, I looked for other ways to represent myself and be able to fight this ticket. With that being said, on May the 11th, we were told, we printed out another Freedom of Information Act, and we were told that we needed to give it to the court clerk, Miss Jennifer Chapin. It is signed and notarized, and this is that Freedom of Information Act. You'll see it was filed with them, accepted by them, and if you read over this, you'll see I'm not really asking for anything that's too outlandish or crazy. Nothing at all that could be considered inappropriate to my case or even irrelevant. This was all information that I intended to use to build my defense. Even though the courts accepted this and we were told that it would be gotten together for us, we were told when we called within 2 weeks, because technically, according to the Freedom of Information Act, you have 20 days in which to get this together. We were then told when we called to request if the information was together that we were not allowed to have the information. The prosecutor had told Ms. Chapin that we would not be receiving that information and that we didn't have a right to request it, and that the Freedom of Information Act request letter is only relevant in felony cases. And I was suffering a traffic violation. So, apparently, according to what I'm understanding, this paper should have never even been accepted by the court, but they accepted it. So their acceptance to me means that they acknowledge that this is a legal document of information that I requested, and they denied it to me. With that being said, when I walked in court on the 29th, Judge Leland was the judge in Flowood, and I had asked for a continuance based on the fact that I did not get the information that I had requested, and that I was going to have to take other avenues to try to get that information because it was relevant. I was denied that continuance and told that we would move on with my court date that day. And we did. Now, through a lot of research that my husband did and brought to light for me, I have to say we had a rock solid defense. First and foremost, we checked the calibration as far as how often a radar gun's calibration should be checked. Now, my husband had found this website, www.radardetector.org, and, I printed out this information that talks about how often a police radar gun should be checked, and it talks about the International Police Association and what they recommend that radar gun be checked before and after the officer's shift on a daily basis. Now, the only thing that I was provided from my Freedom of Information Act that they said was irrelevant, the only information that I was provided out of that was the officer's certification, which was dated 2007. I had no idea whether he had taken any refresher courses or if he's required to. That's one thing I never really found an answer to. Now, as far as the calibration of the gun and the tuning forks, I was provided a certification of the tuning forks and the radar gun that day in court. However, the tuning forks were not present for me to check the serial numbers against the radar gun, which was not present either. Each radar gun has its own set of tuning forks, we have found with much research. If a different set of tuning forks other than what is originally packaged with that radar gun is used to tune said radar, that radar is not calibrated correctly. It's calibrated incorrectly. So it's very relevant that these tuning forks and their serial numbers should match up to the radar gun. Also, another thing about those tuning forks that made it very relevant for them to be in the courtroom was if they are cracked, damaged, scratched in any way whatsoever, those tuning forks become irrelevant because they cannot accurately calibrate said radar gun. With that being said, the calibration that I was handed, the calibration certificate, was from 2014. We're in 2017, y'all. I have questions about that, but was unable to ask those questions, and I'll get to that. Well, it came time for the prosecutor to question Officer Darby, and he did question Officer Darby. I sat there and listened to the statement. He said that he remembered all the details of that day vividly. He tried to say that he clocked me on both his front and back antenna. He said he was on the opposite side of the road, which was a lie, and that he had to turn around to get behind me. Needless to say, when it came my turn to question Officer Darby, I was not given fair opportunity to really do so. The reason I say this is I started off my questioning, let me get my questions here, with asking him, Officer Darby, do you remember the day of April the 24th, 2017, and all the events associated with my stop and my ticket? I was objected to by the prosecutor. He said I was badgering the witness, as the witness had already answered that question. And of course, when he answered that question, like I said, he had told the prosecutor, when the prosecutor asked him, that he did remember all the events of that day, right down to detail to the weather and supposedly where the stop took place and everything. Now, there's a couple funny stories about that because, remember in the beginning of this video when I was talking about we spoke with Lieutenant Cullum regarding the stop, and he was doing his investigation. Of course, he said he found no reason to believe that Officer Darby was rude or anything other than professional to me. He based this solely off of what Officer Darby said to him. Now, the thing I find really disturbing about this is my husband as my witness, and I called him to the stand regarding this as well, and I'll get into that. Lieutenant Cullum, at first, when we were talking to him about him talking to Officer Darby about the situation, himself said Officer Darby had to be refreshed about who I was in my stop because he originally thought I was a woman from Montana that showed him my license on my cellular phone. I have not ever, nor will I ever, be a resident of Montana, much less had a driver's license from that state. And I wouldn't know how to download my driver's license to my cellular phone if my life depended on it. So he had to be refreshed of the details of my stop just days after my stop. So I find it really hard to believe that the officer wanted to sit there and tell the prosecutor he believed that he remembered every detail about my stop. So that's why I re-questioned. When I was objected to, of course, I just carried on and I said, I reminded him he was under oath and that he had said that he remembered the details of my stop. Now, y'all, don't get me wrong. I know this is a little dirty pull, but this is just to show that he was lying because the details that I found out through a thorough investigation of him really show that his character is flawed. I went, and because I felt profiled after looking at his Facebook post, which I will explain here in a minute, I went and placed a Trump bumper sticker on my mother-in-law's van. This is the same Trump bumper sticker that was on my 2012 Dodge Grand Caravan. All right? This is why I felt targeted was my Trump bumper sticker. Now here's the picture I showed Officer Darby on the stand of my mother-in-law's van. And I asked him, Officer Darby, is this the van I was driving that day? To which he said, yes. With that in mind, I pulled out this picture here. And I showed him this picture of the actual van that I was driving that day, which is a Dodge Grand Caravan. Now, I'm going to side-by-side video, This is the vehicle. Please notice right here in this picture, right here, you don't see the Dodge. You can clearly see the Dodge here. The prosecutor objected to this, stating that basically, because I did not put the emblem on the Ford in view, that the officer couldn't be certain. If he wasn't certain, he should have said he wasn't certain. Okay? But he lied. He lied under oath. This still did not have the judge stop the case right there and find me not guilty. The judge upheld the objection of the prosecutor. Upheld the objection of the prosecutor, who, from then on, every question I asked Officer Darby was objected to and upheld by the judge. Even when I asked my husband about the happenings with Lieutenant Cullum and what Lieutenant Cullum had said and me coming home upset and stuff, it was objected to. My own testimony was objected to. I even went on to try to show why I felt targeted that day from Officer Darby. The reason I felt targeted is if you look right here at this picture, that is a picture of our ex-president, Barack and Michelle Obama. Okay? Now, if you'll see this picture, this was the profile change, okay, on January 20th from this officer, okay? Now, I don't know if all of y'all follow politics greatly, but on January 20th, a very significant thing happened. Donald Trump became our president. As an officer of the law, he has a right to believe whatever he wants. But I find it very hard to believe that I was not targeted, given the profile picture being changed on the date that Barack Obama's leaving office. That's kind of, to me, struck a nerve. It struck a nerve. It wouldn't have so much so if I had went back through his profiles and seen that this is something he'd done for every president that left office, but that was not the case. Furthermore, while trying to show the integrity of this officer, and give me one moment, will one of y'all go get that paper off my scanner? I think I left it in my scanner. We ran across something else on his Facebook page, and it was it's a picture of kind of like the Blue Lives Matter symbol or the back the badge. It's a Hattiesburg officer badge, has the blue line through it, and there is some conversation that is going on that picture that I found very perturbing. One of his friends come out and basically ask him, curious question, what does the thin blue line stand for? Sean Darby, I see it a lot on tags, bumpers, and in windows. He said the thin blue line represents an officer, but some of those get stickers thinking it will keep them from a ticket. LMBO, not today. Now, to me, this made me feel like, hey, was he a ticket-writing happy cop, possibly? Maybe for something that didn't even happen? I did not know, but I really felt at this point that I was really, really targeted because of my beliefs. Now, through much more research, we went into building my defense and finding the accuracy and stuff about radar. My husband, like I said, he spent days, weeks, even a month trying to get all the details together. And we found a website about the truth about speed enforcement and radar, and it talks about shadowing and how K-band radar can actually shadow, and it could even measure something that's up to a mile away if it's bigger than my vehicle. So this was something that we wanted to bring up in our questioning, but of course was objected to. During my testimony, I also brought up several court cases, most familiarly the state of Florida versus Aguilar. Now I know it's a little old, but it talks about where it measures. There was a radar that measured a house going 28 miles per hour. Now we all know a house is a structurally sound thing, and it cannot go 28 miles an hour. The Supreme Court actually ruled that the radar was irrelevant in this case. And it's widely known as the Miami radar trial. You ought to look it up. There's also the United States versus Fields, which talks about establishing radar to see if it's accurate. And it talks about it actually registered the fan, the radiator fan on the vehicle. So, yeah. There's the Commonwealth of Kentucky versus Honeycutt. You know, there's several different cases that show the irrelevancy of radar that I brought to view of the court and was all objected to by the prosecutor and upheld by the judge. Now, where I was talking about the tuning forks and cracks and chips, this is the website we found regarding cracks and chips. That website is the freethoughtproject.com, 7 simple steps to fighting your speeding ticket. We also, this is where we also found out about shadowing. We also found out if his heater or air conditioner was on, that it could have caused an irrelevant reading. So these are all things to keep in mind. We had much evidence. Now, by law, Supposedly, all one has to do is show plausible cause that they are not guilty. I believe that day I showed plausible cause. However, I was blocked on all levels from the prosecutor, who will remain unnamed, due to the fact of the following events that happened, which really changed my family's life forever, and my viewpoint of law enforcement for a good long time, if not forever. During that court day, when I put my husband on the stand to testify about what went down, what we were told by Lieutenant Colon and such, and I was objected to asking him any questions. My husband was not allowed to answer any question. He stepped off the stand, he looked at the prosecutor, and he simply said, "Man, we really need to talk." How do you expect my wife? And about that time, he yells out, "What did you say? Did you just threaten me?" The prosecutor yells that out. Immediately, 6 officers surround my husband, putting their fist, their arms, and everything in his back. My husband is disabled due to back issues. This tore me up. He wasn't fighting them. He was not in any way fighting them at all. To be treated so brutally. The police brutality that took place in the courtroom that day, in front of the judge who sat there and said nothing, was absurd. They kept pushing their arms up in his back, trying to push his neck up and stuff so they could get the cuffs on him and stuff, and it had nothing to do with not being able to cuff him. My husband's a big man, and trying to put his hands behind his back to be cuffed, it took 2 sets of cuffs. It took him a little while to figure that out after they manhandled him. They had upset me so much, all I could do is say, "Please, please, stop, stop, stop. That's my husband. He's disabled. You're hurting him. You're hurting him." And I started to walk towards one of the officers, begging him. I had no intention to touch the officer. The bailiff looked at me with his hand on his taser and told me I could step back or I could be tased. It got that real up in the courtroom, where my husband was not a threat to anyone. Anyone. From the moment he was told he was being arrested, he put his hands behind his back. He didn't fight. They took my husband out of the courtroom. Of course, that came my time to testify. But like I said, even when I got on the stand to testify, they basically, I was railroaded. The prosecutor objected to everything I had to say. Therefore, if he objects, of course, nothing I say is relevant, right? At that point, I was frustrated. I threw my hands up in the air and I said, "Your Honor, I can see I'm not going to get a fair trial, and the prosecutor's not going to let me talk. And so therefore, I guess I just have to throw myself on the mercy of the court, explain to you I don't work, I'm fighting for my disability, and that, I'm don't know how I'll pay it." He tells me to go back in this room in the back and make payment arrangements. While back in this room, my husband was probably 3 or 4 rooms down from me, but he was close enough that I could hear what was going on. I heard him multiple times ask to use the restroom. He even went to explaining that some of the medicines he's on makes him have to use the restroom when he needs to. All the while, for 30 minutes, while begging to use the restroom, officers continued to tell him that was not their problem. I was so upset I was crying. An officer with a white shirt, I'm gathering he's probably a higher up officer, because he had a white shirt. It was real starched and stuff. A little short guy, kind of bald, red face, comes in and tells me I need to get myself together. I need to shut up and grow up because my husband was not receiving any treatment that he didn't deserve. What? So, because a prosecutor assumed that my husband threatened him, and that's exactly what he assumed, because it was not a threat in any way, shape, or form. He just wanted to talk to him. He wanted to know, hey, how can my wife build a defense if you're going to try to, block her at every level? And then to suffer the police brutality that he did has forever changed my life and the way I think about law enforcement at this time. My husband was transferred to the Rankin County Jail, where when he arrived, his blood pressure was high, and he was denied any of his medication, including his blood pressure medicine. I could have lost my husband that night. Because of his blood pressure. They had called their doctor, who gave him a blood pressure pill. Not quite certain exactly what it is, but a blood pressure pill, but it wasn't his. It wasn't his. It wasn't what he was used to. My husband, like I said, has a bad back. He also has problems walking at times. And so being on them steel beds was not good for his back, and he was not allotted any of his meds regarding that, which is, I understand they're not going to give narcotics in jail. But, my husband suffered injustice. He was arrested under false pretenses. I did not receive a fair trial, to say the least. And the reason that we don't mention the prosecutor's name is because when my husband was arrested, he was never read his Miranda rights. He was never even given a chance for a trial. Before they took him to Rankin County Jail, they brought him back in front of Judge Leland, to where he was told he was guilty. Not asked if he was guilty. He was told he was guilty. And he was sentenced to jail, 24 hours in jail, or 2 days in jail with one suspended, is the way they put it, and $400.75 fine. He was not even given a trial. He was told he was guilty. He was not read his Miranda rights. If that doesn't even begin to take the cake, the prosecutor spoke up and asked for a no contact order on my husband. Now, the reason that I'm not showing all of it is because the prosecutor's name is in this. It also explains that in no way can third parties contact him regarding the case or the matter, or my husband will be in violation of said no contact order. So in protection for my husband, I choose not to disclose said prosecutor's name at this point in time. However, there's a lot of corruption going on in Flowood, Mississippi, and Rankin County. And, I felt that y'all needed to know about it. And I'm not asking people to take my side or the officer's side. I'm asking you to choose. How would you feel if you were in this situation? How would you feel if you were profiled for your beliefs politically or even religiously? This has changed my family's lifestyle a lot. My husband don't want to go out for the fear of a cop just stopping us for no reason. He feels like there's no justice, that humanity has been lost. In a man that I have tried to restore humanity in for years and tried to make him believe in the justice system and that law enforcement was good people. They were there to serve and protect. They have crushed my husband in a way that can never, ever be changed. Never should anyone live in fear of walking out their door. Yet he does daily now. And he did nothing wrong. Absolutely nothing wrong. He's seen me start to get upset over the way the prosecutor was doing me. And all he wanted to do was get closer to me to keep me from stressing due to my blood pressure issues. And in return, he was accused of threatening the prosecutor. In return, my husband suffered police brutality that he should not have suffered. Why? Because we have a corrupt judge in Flowood, Mississippi. One who lets the prosecutor run the show. I mean, taxpayers of Flowood, Mississippi, I would say we don't even need a judge there. The prosecutor runs the show. Let him be judge, jury, and executioner. I'm leaving it up to y'all on what you want to believe, what you choose to believe, what you choose to do about this. But I'm not going to stop until everyone I could possibly get the word out to knows what happened and how the justice system just does not work anymore. How corrupt my state here in Mississippi is. We're number one for state corruption. Come on, people. You know, I just don't know what else to say. You decide. I hope y'all will share this. Leave comments down below. Love to hear from you. Y'all have a wonderful day.